Hi, welcome to Why the Book Wins. My name is Laura, and today's video is part of a series I do where I compare books with their movie adaptations. And through these videos, I discuss why the majority of the time, when it comes to the book versus movie, the book wins. Now, having said that, I enjoy watching movies just as much as I enjoy reading books. Like, I love both. So I do give unbiased reviews of both book and movie, I think, for the most part. I also wanted to let you know that this is available as a podcast. And so these tend to be about 30 minutes long, but especially for ones that go over that, if it just works better for you to listen to it as a podcast, they are available. So just search Why the Book Wins in whatever podcasting platform you use. I will also link to them down below for Spotify and Google Podcast. For Spotify and Apple Podcasts, because those are the ones most people use. So yeah, if you would rather do that, those are available too. And before we get into this video, I do want to say that there will be spoilers for both the book and the movie. So if you plan on reading the book or watching the movie and do not want it spoiled, then go do that first and then come back and watch this video. And I guess that about wraps it up as far as intro stuff. Aside from, I would love it if you subscribe to my channel if you love book-related content, and I share my book collection of vintage books and special edition books like Easton Press and Folio Society and all that stuff. So if you're into books or movies, but definitely I think my channel leans more towards books, but I might get more into movies as time goes on, but for now I'm leaning more towards books. Anyway, if that interests you, you should definitely subscribe to my channel. And yeah, without further ado, let's get right into today's video. Hi, thanks for joining me. Today I am talking about The Lost World, which is the second Jurassic Park book written by Michael Crichton, the same guy who wrote the first one. And this one was released in 1995. And then the movie, The Lost World, was directed by Steven Spielberg, the same guy who directed the first one, and was released in 1997. So I covered the first book and movie back in October of 2020, so it's been a little while now, and at the time I knew I was going to come back around and film the second one. It took a little longer than I had thought, but here I am, finally recording on The Lost World. So I guess you could say I went into this book with high expectations because I loved the first one. It was so good. And this one had a good rating on Goodreads, and so I was expecting to really like it. However, it was a bit of a letdown. So Crichton made extinction and evolution a big part of this story, which is fine. My problem, though, is that there are far too many monologues about evolution and extinction, specifically given by Ian Malcolm. And I read, I think on Wikipedia, it said that Crichton had some long monologue where Ian was talking about extinction and God or something, but that he then deleted it because it was too much. But the version I read definitely had a part that was very lengthy where Malcolm was giving this speech. So I was like, did I get an edition that included that part or something? But so yeah, there was just too often that happened, and it's kind of interesting, but it didn't pertain to the events of the story, aside from Malcolm just explaining his thoughts on evolution and extinction. But I don't know, that wasn't why I wanted to read The Lost World, was to hear, I'm assuming Malcolm reflects Crichton's opinions, but I wasn't going into The Lost World wanting to read about his opinions on extinction or evolution or whatever. I don't know, I get it had to do with the story because that's what they were studying. But yeah, just too many boring monologues ultimately is one of the problems I had with this book. And then there are some exciting suspenseful scenes, but even those, I guess they just kind of dragged on. And because they were dragging on, it made them less suspenseful, especially at the end. Of course, they had to miss the helicopter, and then it goes on for another 50 pages on how they get off the island, when had they just cut the helicopter, things could have wrapped up quicker, but he just dragged the action out too long so that it wasn't even exciting after a certain amount of time. And also the characters just felt too much like characters and not enough like real people. I don't remember thinking that with the first one, but it has been a little while since I've read that. So yeah, they just didn't feel real. They felt like caricatures or characters and not people, you know? But I don't want to hate on this book too much because it was entertaining. And I did enjoy parts of it. I was just disappointed by it ultimately, though. And then why there is even a sequel to this book. So Michael Crichton, he actually didn't plan on writing a sequel, but then the success of the first book and movie, obviously they were huge. And so everybody was telling him or asking him like, when's the sequel coming out? And so he was kind of pressured into doing it. And he was finally like, okay, I'll write a sequel. I read the first book knowing there was a second. And the end of the first book ends with them learning that dinosaurs, in the beginning too, but we learned that dinosaurs are migrating from the island where the park is at over to Costa Rica. And so in the end, like Grant and them go to Costa Rica, like they're going to study the dinosaurs that are migrating or something, if I recall. And so I thought he was setting it up for a sequel in that sense, where like there's going to be more dinosaurs because these ones are migrating and then they're breeding. However, that was not part of this book at all. So I was wrong about him setting it up for a sequel because he hadn't intended a sequel. And for the sequel, The Lost World, he went a totally different route where there is just, a separate island where dinosaurs were being bred by Hammond, but we'll get into that. But yeah, so I just thought it was interesting that he was sort of pressured into doing it, and it's not something that happened maybe as organically as other sequels. So I feel like maybe that's part of the reason why this one just didn't have that special something to it that the first one had. So yeah, the plot of this one, Hammond, who created Jurassic Park, of course, he had a separate island from where the park was at. And on this island, he was breeding the dinosaurs. And it is called Site B. And even though things on the island where the park were at, all the dinosaurs were gone, I guess, or something. Basically, there are still dinosaurs on Site B. And nobody had really known about Site B. And so they're just existing. And they're able to exist because no one knows they're even there, essentially. And then we have paleontologist Dr. Levine, who finds out about Site B, and he convinces Ian Malcolm to join him in checking it out and researching it and using these dinosaurs, observing these dinosaurs to learn why dinosaurs back in the day, like, went extinct for whatever reason. People say it's a meteor, but he's like, maybe it was something in their behavioral pattern that caused them to be extinct, and we can study these dinosaurs and see what they're doing, and it can help us learn about the past. And I know what you're thinking. Ian Malcolm? He's back in the second book, but he died in the first one. Which, spoiler alert for the first book if you haven't read it. But yeah, Ian Malcolm is back. And so in the movie Jurassic Park, Ian Malcolm lives. So the fact that he's in the sequel isn't weird. But in the book, it definitely made it appear that he died. However, in the second book, it's explained that he was taken to a hospital with really good doctors and he recovered and he survived. And like behind the scenes, why Crichton felt the need to bring him back was because he just said he couldn't write a book without Ian Malcolm. He said that he needed Malcolm, like he could do without the others. He didn't need Grant or the other characters, but he could not write a book without Malcolm because he was a key character who would explain how things would go wrong and why they would go wrong and how it was just inevitable. And I'm also assuming Malcolm is maybe his like self-insert character, and so maybe he just couldn't write the book without his self-insert. But in the book, the characters that are part of the story and go to Site B are Dr. Levine, who is a paleontologist, Ian Malcolm, who is, the mathematician who specializes in the chaos theory, Dr. Sarah Harding, who is an animal behavioralist. Then we have Dr. Thorne and Eddie Carr, who are in charge, like the engineers who made the technology they're using. And then we have Kelly and Arby, who are the two kids that snuck onto the plane that was leaving. And then we have three bad guys, Dodgson, the main bad guy, King, and then this other third bad guy who dies pretty early on. And those are the only people that go to Site B. So on to the movie. With the acting, we have Jeff Goldblum, who reprises his role as Ian Malcolm, and, he's wonderful as Malcolm. And in the movie, his character in the second movie is kind of like a laughingstock, maybe. That sounds a bit extreme, but after the island incident, he told people, like, they have dinosaurs, and InGen is doing something they shouldn't be, and there's dinosaurs, and this is what happened. And nobody really believes him. I mean, some people do, but for the most part, people don't believe him. And so he's just kind of made fun of and no one takes him seriously. And InGen, of course, is upset with him being like, stop telling people about this. Whereas Hammond, he and Hammond maybe still have a decent relationship, but it's the other people that we'll be talking about who work for InGen that are like kind of tired of Malcolm trying to exploit or talk about what they're doing. But in the book, though, he signed a non-disclosure agreement and he was paid a hefty sum in order to not talk about it. And so he doesn't. And people who have like heard rumors approach him and are like, ask him about the dinosaurs, and he denies it. So that was a change from book to movie. Julianne Moore plays Sarah Harding, and I think she was well cast. I liked her in this. Vince Vaughn is in this. He plays Nick Van Owen, who is he's a photographer. He's not specifically a wildlife photographer, but he will go to war zones or wildlife or whatever and takes pictures. And yeah, I didn't know he was going to be in this movie, so that was kind of funny. He's obviously much younger, but yeah, he's fine. Peter Postlethwaite, probably saying that wrong, but he plays one of the main bad guys whose name is Roland, and he is this outdoorsy wildlife hunter expert. And one of the reasons he agreed to go to the island is because he has a goal of hunting and killing a T-Rex. And yeah, Vince Vaughn's character wasn't in the book, and neither was this one. And Arliss Howard plays the guy in charge of InGen now, and his name is Peter. He also wasn't in the book. But he kind of plays, the stereotypical bad guy who doesn't really know what he's getting himself into and is kind of foolish and is very greedy, and it prevents him from seeing how foolish his actions are, because he's so focused on greed. And then we have Vanessa Chester, who plays the girl Kelly. And so as far as the differences from book to movie go, there are a lot of changes that were made, even just the character list. As you can see from the characters I listed in the book and then the characters I listed in the movie, just right there's some big changes. And so for this episode, I'll talk about the bigger changes that were made and some of the similarities, but yeah, ultimately there's a lot of changes between the two. It's almost like it's telling the story of two different expeditions because yeah, and the ending is just so different as well. So lots of differences here, and I will only be covering some of them, but I'll be covering the major ones here. So to start with their reason for even going to Site B, in the book we have Dr. Levine, who is a paleontologist, and he is the reason they even go to Site B, and yet they totally removed his character from the movie. But in the book, he hears about Site B, that there's dinosaurs there, and it's rumored, and he's heard the rumors around Ian Malcolm, and he approaches him, and basically they form a friendship, and they decide that they both want to check out Site B and check out these dinosaurs, which, considering what happened to Malcolm when he was on Jurassic Park, and then now he is able to be convinced to go back to an island full of dinosaurs, did he not learn his lesson? What? He's just going to go right back? In the movie, at least they made it so Dr. Hammond basically manipulated Malcolm into going back by telling him that his girlfriend, Sarah Harding, was already there. And so Malcolm goes to Site B, to go on a rescue mission to save Sarah. Because, yeah, initially he's like, no, I'm not going to Site B. Are you kidding? But in the book, he's just on board. And it takes time. It's not like it's right away because they're preparing for it for a while. But still, that seemed, I don't know. I don't know any scientists personally, so I don't know if they would be down to just, if they care that much about the research, that they would be willing to go through a traumatic experience all over again. But I don't know. It seemed a bit too easy, I thought, in the book. But yeah, so the reason for even going is to study extinction and evolution, whereas in the movie, so InGen is going to go there and exploit the dinosaurs, of course, and make money off of them. And so Sarah goes, and they get a team to go there to just observe them. And then while Sarah is there is when InGen decides to go as well, and then Malcolm goes to rescue Sarah. So I guess Sarah kind of went just to observe the dinosaurs, similar to why Levine wanted to go. Yeah, and then the InGen guys do show up, and of course they want to make money off the dinosaurs. So in some ways, I guess it's different, how they get to the island and what convinces Malcolm. But yeah, I don't know. The topic of extinction and evolution was not brought up in the movie. I guess Sarah just wanted to study the dinosaurs just to study them, apparently. And then with Kelly and Arby, so it's two kids that are in 7th grade, I believe. And Levine will be a guest teacher in their class. And both of them are at the top of their class. And so they're kind of like Levine's assistants. And they're doing, this extra credit type thing by helping him with stuff he's working on. And so that weekend, they're supposed to test out some equipment. And so they get permission from their parents to be gone for the weekend so they can take part in this testing out the equipment. But Levine does not show up, and we learn that he is already at Site B. And so Kelly and Arby go to Dr. Thorne, and they're like, Dr. Levine isn't here, what's going on? And they find out that he is at Site B. And Dr. Thorne tells Kelly and Arby, like, you guys can't come. Like, this is not the place for children. But, of course, they sneak aboard and are there on the trip. I seem to recall the kids being a bit more annoying in the first book. Like, I know the daughter in the book was really annoying. Whereas here, they're not annoying, and they are more helpful, I think, more so than they were in the first book. And the movie changes this because Kelly, so first of all, there is no Arby, it's just Kelly, and they made her Ian Malcolm's daughter, and so she wants to spend time with her dad, but he's going on this expedition, and so she just sneaks on the plane and is there for the expedition. So having her be Malcolm's daughter is a big change from the book. So in the movie, we have Eddie Carr, and he's the main engineer who has created their stuff they're using. And he was in the book, but he was like a student, or I guess he was like an adult, but he worked for Thorne. So Thorne was the main one. But one similarity is that in both book and movie, Eddie Carr dies in both. He is killed by a dinosaur. And in the book, like, his death was a bit grisly, and the kids see the dinosaur, like, killing him, which, like, it says that they were in shock or something, but an event like that, like, can you imagine how traumatizing that would be for a child to see, like, let alone an adult? And those kids would be, like, messed up for so long, right? Which in The Lost World, the movie, we see Tim and Lex very briefly, and they're older now. But I wish they kind of would have been in more, even though they weren't in the book. But yeah, like, Tim and Lex, along with these new kids, like, the things they saw at such a young age, like, that would, like, traumatize them for so long, right? But of course, this isn't, that serious of a book or movie, and so we don't get into that. But yeah, so Thorne is not in the movie, so he is one of the casualties who didn't even make it into the film, along with Dr. Levine. And Levine was a paleontologist, as I said, whereas in the book, Sarah Harding is an animal behavioralist. But in the movie, because they get rid of Dr. Levine, they have Sarah Harding be the paleontologist. And so she kind of takes on a lot of the characteristics of Levine, as well as just some of the events. It's kind of like with Sarah Harding rather than with Levine. And then in both book and movie, they have the baby T-Rex, which in the movie, the baby T-Rex is pretty big. Like, it's the size of, like, a large adult dog, whereas in the book they made it seem like it was smaller. And so they come across it because they're in the T-Rex nest and they see the injured baby, which in both book and movie the baby was injured by the guys from InGen. Although in the book I can't remember if the bad guys are from InGen. I don't remember now. Anyway, the bad guys hurt the baby T-Rex in both book and movie. And then, Sarah and Eddie and them come across the baby T-Rex. And in the book, it's biting onto Eddie's shoe and it won't let go. And he's like, they're leaving. And he's like, what am I supposed to do? It won't let go of my shoe. And Sarah tells him, just shoot it because it's going to die anyway because it's injured. And so then they leave Eddie. But turns out Eddie couldn't bring himself to shoot it. And he brings the baby dinosaur back to their trailer. And Sarah Harding makes a cast for it like she does in the movie. And then both book and movie, the mom T-Rex comes back for her baby and she takes the baby back. And then she tries to push the trailer over the edge with Sarah and Malcolm. So in the movie, it's Sarah, Malcolm, and Nick Owen are in the trailer, whereas in the book, it's just Sarah and Malcolm. Anyway, so they almost fall off the edge of this cliff in the trailer, but then they are saved. So that happens in both book and movie. And I enjoyed the scene in the movie. I thought it was pretty exciting. And with the ending, so Dodgson is the main bad guy in the book. And his death is a little unconventional, I would say, because he and Harding are hiding under a Jeep because there is a T-Rex approaching. And so they're hiding under the Jeep and staying still. And then Sarah, Dodgson isn't trying to push her or anything, but then Sarah realizes the only way this T-Rex is going to leave is if it gets something to eat. And so she kicks Dodgson out from underneath the Jeep, and the T-Rex takes him. So I just was kind of surprised by that because you don't often see the protagonist killing the antagonist, which she doesn't kill him, but she pushes him out there to be killed by the T-Rex. And so, yeah, that kind of surprised me, but gotta do what you gotta do to survive, I suppose, right? But anyway, the T-Rex does not kill him right away. It takes him back to their nest. And once they're at the nest, the mom T-Rex has the baby T-Rex, finish him off. And this is something that was, alluded to or earlier in the story. So it's a nice little tie-in to have that happen to Dodgson. And from there, the ending is kind of dragged out. Like I said, they were supposed to catch a helicopter, but then they missed the helicopter, and it just takes too long, in my opinion. But eventually they do get on a boat and they do get home. Whereas in the movie, they do get on a helicopter, but when like all the good guys leave, Ingen is still there. And as they're flying off the island, they see that the Peter guy has trapped the T-Rex and that he's got it and he's going to do something with it. And so the movie then proceeds to show us San Diego, where where Peter is having the T-Rex be brought. And of course, things on the boat go awry, and so the boat comes crashing in, and the movie has the T-Rex just wreaking havoc on San Diego. This may sound a bit over the top, and in some ways it was. However, I did enjoy this part, even if it was, a bit over the top, I guess. But I thought the San Diego scenes were maybe some of the more entertaining scenes in the movie. And we have that great scene where the boy looks out his window, and I think he sees the T-Rex drinking water from his pool. Later, though, they have a dog in the backyard, and the T-Rex eats the dog. We don't see it, but we see the doghouse hanging from the T-Rex's mouth. And sometimes I think of Jurassic Park as like fun family movies, but then they have a scene like that where the dog dies, and it's like, oof, man, I guess, this isn't quite as fun as I thought it would be. But yeah, and after the T-Rex eventually leaves San Diego, basically Malcolm and Harding lure the T-Rex back onto the boat using its baby. And so the T-Rex comes back to get its baby, and when it's on the boat, they lock it up and it's sent back to Site B. So yeah, very different endings in both book and movie, because in the book, all the bad guys were killed, and so nothing happens with the dinosaurs and they're able to leave. Whereas in the movie, the dinosaur is brought back, but eventually it is taken back. Yeah, very different. And in my episode for the first Jurassic Park, I talk about how the heart of the movie is about Grant and his changing viewpoint towards children. And so oftentimes what makes a great movie is someone's character arc, and all the other things just make the movie entertaining. Like the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park are entertaining and fun and exciting, but the real story is Grant and how he changes over the course of the film. In The Lost World, we have Malcolm, who is told by his daughter and his girlfriend, Sarah Harding, which in the book, she and Malcolm and Ian have had a past, but they weren't currently dating the way they were in the movie. But anyway, in the movie, they're always telling Malcolm that he's never where he is. He never shows up when he says he will, and he's never on time and all that stuff. But that was never, I thought they would do more of an arc with that. But I don't know if there was never a defining moment at the end to show he changed in that way. I mean, he helped save San Diego with Sarah, but yeah, I don't know. So it wasn't really a defining arc the way it was in the first movie. Unless there was a scene that I just missed, but I don't recall there ever being a moment where it's okay, he's changed now, So yeah, that's just one of the reasons why this movie just isn't as good, is because it's just so much action and not enough heart, I think. And then I also wanted to mention a few scenes that are in The Lost World that were actually from the first book. So to start, the Jurassic Park book begins with a family on a beach, and then their young daughter finds a small dinosaur and then it bites her. And that's not in the Jurassic Park movie. However, it is in the Lost World movie. And then also we have the character Dieter, who is killed by Compies, the same small dinosaur. And he gets injured. And then, they just kind of overtake him, and that's how he dies. And this was not in The Lost World, but this is, spoiler alert for Jurassic Park if you haven't read that book, but in the book, that's how Hammond dies. And so it's the same scene, just with a different character. So I thought that was interesting that they pulled some scenes from the first book to be in The Lost World. Also, I wanted to talk about the guy who plays Dieter. He is played by Peter Stormare, and he is in an episode of Seinfeld, that one where George is trying to get the Frogger machine across the street. And then earlier in the movie, we meet Hammond's butler, played by Ian Abercrombie. And he is also in Seinfeld. He is the recurring character of Mr. Pitt, who Elaine works for. So as a Seinfeld fan, I thought it was funny that we got two Seinfeld actors in this movie. And in the first movie, we of course have Wayne Knight, who plays Newman in Seinfeld, and he's a fairly big role in the first Jurassic Park movie. So book or movie, The Lost World, comparing it to the first movie, it just was too much action. And Spielberg himself has admitted this, where it's just an action movie with dinosaurs and it's just lacking the heart, that the first one had. Not that, I don't know, the first one was kind of cheesy in that way, in some ways, but still it was better than the second one that is really lacking in that department. And it was just really about all the action. Like, there's so much action in here. And yeah, I don't know, even though the first one had less action, when it started happening, like, it was very exciting and suspenseful. Whereas this one, I don't know, it wasn't as suspenseful, I wouldn't say. Having said that, I think when it comes to the book or movie for this one, I would honestly pick the movie is what I'm leaning towards, because the book, it just dragged too much. And yeah, I guess I went into it with high expectations, like I said, and so that affects my thoughts on it as well, because it just wasn't as suspenseful and entertaining and interesting. And the first one also had like a creepy element to it, which was not in the second one at all, I didn't think. But there are plenty of people online who really like The Lost World, so maybe my opinion here is an unpopular one, but I definitely prefer the first book. And honestly, I don't think I would ever read The Lost World again. I probably wouldn't watch the movie again either, to be honest, but between the two, I think I enjoyed the movie experience more so than the book experience, because the book just dragged. There were so many times where I was just like, man, wrap it up. So yeah, I think I have to say that the movie wins with this one. But yeah, I guess that's it for The Lost World. Like I said, I do have my recording for Jurassic Park, which I enjoyed much more, so definitely listen to that one if you are interested. I recorded that one before I started filming these as a video, so it's only available, like the audio is only available, but yeah, definitely give that one a listen if you want to learn more about Jurassic Park, the first book and movie. And join me next week. We will be ending the month of January covering The Snowman, which is very fitting for January. So it's like a noir detective novel set in Norway, and the book is very popular. And the movie has terrible ratings. I haven't yet watched it. I just finished the book, so I'm about to watch the movie. So I'm curious how I'll like the movie, because apparently it sucks. But anyway, that will be next week's podcast and video. That will be next week's episode, so tune in for that one as well. And comment down below what your thoughts are on The Lost World if you've read it, and how you like it in comparison with the first book and movie. So thanks again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And also, real quick, if you could give me a rating on Spotify, you can now rate podcasts. It would mean so much to me. And also, if you could leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, that would be awesome. And any new reviews I get on Apple Podcasts, I will share on this video as a shout out. So I only have 3 right now, and the last one I got was like 6 months ago. So it's been a while. So I could use some new reviews on Apple. Even if you don't use Apple Podcasts, well, I guess you need an account to leave a review, but yeah, it would just mean a lot to me if I could get some reviews on there. So yeah, thanks again for listening and supporting this YouTube channel and podcast, and I will see you next time. Bye.